Everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. Mike Tyson said that once. Ty, myself, and the worst guy in your fantasy baseball league chat are going to discuss what we all wanted from our own teams in 2022, and then what happened to those teams in 2022, and what the winners of those leagues did to win in 2022. It's time for Dingers.
This is Dingers, way more than fantasy baseball. We keep it real when we talk and knock it straight out the park. Let's see the stats. What's the average draft position? What kind of plays you making? Check the wins above replacement. Check the lineups and the points. This I gotta see. What's your path to victory? Are they aiming for a dynasty? Get points going head to head. Please don't do me no favors. We're always watching waivers. Ain't no minor league. This is major. Yeah, Dingers. Let's go.
Welcome to Dingers, the only fantasy baseball podcast for smart people. It's not just Bo Bichette that wins you championships. That's why week in and week out we're delivering tips and strategies to help you live that straight up OG lifestyle. Tyler Child's joined, as always, by Robbie Baseball from the Murder Room and Rotorati back. And I hit him right between the eyes as we started here today.
For anyone that finished the previous podcast and immediately jumped into this one, that's got to just sound great. I haven't listened to the last one, but I mean, I'm sure that sounds great.
I was not sure I was going to get invited back to this one after the end of the last one.
Well, when you're wrong, you're wrong. It's okay, Ronnie. We can all admit it.
I mean,
for another day, guys.
For
another day. Ty, good to see you again. We had to delay recording yet again. That's just what happens. Illnesses take us over. And Rotorani has just as much of a social life as we do. So here we are, 9:30 Saturday night, fantasy baseball podcasting in December. All right, cool. Ronnie, yeah, how are you, Ronnie?
Oh, I'm pretty good. So it's been a long week since the last episode. Stewing on that Bo Bichette still.
Yeah, that's all right.
You'll see. I've got a fun question to end tonight that I've got queued up, so we'll save that for the end. But I think we got a lot to cover tonight, so I think we just get down to business, and that always starts right here.
A long time ago, someone decided to put stuff in glass bottles. In some of these bottles, they put juice or milk, and that was stupid. Today, only alcohol and a few other products remain in the containers from the gods. It's time for beers and bourbon, because good advice only comes in a bottle.
Ooh, where did that one come from? Ronnie got to me.
You should know what this one is.
That did sound a lot like a Woodford.
It was a Woodford.
Ooh. Yeah, you could hear with the thick glass bottom, you could just hear the resonating bass of that in your clammy fingers.
That cork popping out.
How about a Woodford? Well, I'm crown floating. I cracked my cider, no problem, and then my Guinness just tried to hit the floor. So now I'm trying to find something that'll absorb it, and I've used all my Kleenex drying my tears from the results of my fantasy season. So,
I found.
Yeah, Ty, what do you got there?
This is Cooper's Craft. This is the one I told you that I found that I was intrigued by. And you know what? Like, I don't have like the most exotic palate. Like, it's basically like my wine palette, which is it red or is it white? It's kind of like, is it bourbon or is it not? Like, for the most part, that's the palette. But it's actually
your wine palette is that from a bottle or a Tetra Pak?
If it's white wine, I'm probably not drinking it. But red, I can put her down if I need to. Yeah. So this one's actually been good to me. So we know Rob's drinking a Crown Float. Surprise!
Absolutely.
And Ronnie's got the Woodford. So let's get into it. I mean, we've got off season. It's happening. But before we do, Twitter mentions, you can find the podcast at Dingers Pod, myself at Attorney Boss, at Robbie Baseball 1, or at Rotorani for the guest tonight. So before we jump in, Ronnie, anything you want to get off your chest before we jump into hot news?
Oh, it's just let's just get right at it. I guess there is one thing I just remembered now. DeGrom signing in Texas. I do not see that going that
Okay, let's
well
jump
for the
into it.
Texas
Yeah.
Rangers or
Yeah.
fantasy owners, really.
That's what I was going to say. Money aside, I don't like DeGrom long term. I mean, look at the track record. There will be moments of brilliance, and that's very much like Kershaw. And as a guy who's had Kershaw in our home league, I've suffered the consequences, and I think that's what DeGrom rosterers are going to find themselves doing. Hopefully, he can be healthier in Texas, but I don't know. Ty, do you like that one? All the former All Stars are going to Texas.
I mean, the injury risk is huge, but from a fantasy perspective, I love this because you've got a really good defense, right? The outfield is lightning. You've got a pitcher's ballpark. You've got a young corner infielder. You've got two studs up the middle. You've got a guy that runs like the wind in center. What's not to like here from a fantasy perspective? Like K numbers are there. Injury risk, cool.
Yeah,
but
that's all it is.
But with velos today, what pitcher doesn't carry the same risk? Like, give me DeGrom over and the risk. Give me Scherzer over and the risk over all.
Okay, I got one for you, Ty. Would you rather have DeGrom or Patrick Sandoval?
Would I rather have
Wrong
Patrick
audience.
Sandoval
Wrong
or
audience.
Sandpaper?
Whoa, hey, or the first rights in the waiver claim.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, well here's another potential waiver claim guy. I'll fire off a couple of quick ones here. Julio Herron signed a minor league deal with San Diego. That's a veteran starting pitcher, was with Atlanta for years. He's like their tip, and then Philly. He's supposed to be an SP2. He's consistently a fantasy SP5. Whatever. Just deep leagues, you might want to consider that guy. Mike Clevenger looking to resurrect to the White Sox. And here's a couple good ones, Ty. I'm going to give you the closer here, but Aristides Aquino is off the Reds and headed to the KBO. I have yet to see him get dropped in a dynasty league, and I don't know why, because he should be, because he ain't coming back. He was flash in the pan, and it was really exciting when he came up and hit all those bombs in his rookie year, and people were like, who is this? But those days are over. So
Aquino might hit 70 bombs in the KBO. Like
he could totally do the Thames thing, right? He's got the ability.
Like he has crazy light tower power. Like, and if you just take a little bit of the high spin stuff away, which you generally do in
right, you get more crafty
Asia,
pitching.
Yeah, like he could go to town over there. We'll see. That one for me is a really interesting one over there. Go ahead, Robbie.
Well, the next one is that Roberto Osuna is going back to the KBO. So, I think whatever. At least he's going to still be pitching at a high level.
I thought he was in the Mexican league, but
he was. Yeah, he jumped over, and I think this is less of nobody in MLB wants him, or more of no one in MLB wants him than going back to KBO. I think it's just the only option at this point that has a road to MLB still in front of him.
Yeah, and as well off to KBO, just so we'll get it all out of the way here. Maikel Franco, he's now off, so smell you later, poopsicle. And now we can get into some news that's fun and exciting, and some that's kind of boring, but housekeeping stuff for us because we are your Deep Dive Dynasty podcast. The Phillies have claimed, are we going to call him first baseman outfielder, Jay Cave? So he's there. He's a guy every so often. If you have a 40-man roster, he might be someone you can stream. Waiver wire type guy in the right situation. I don't know if that's going to be the Phillies, but anyway, we'll see. Ty, why don't you go with our first free agent pitcher?
Yeah, Kyle Gibson, 1-year deal in Baltimore. This is a smart deal for Baltimore. They've got pitching coming. Kyle Gibson on a rebound year. They need somebody that can eat some innings while they wait for some of those young arms. So they're probably looking for more deals like this. If not, one more and then a long-term guy would be my guess. They've got two pretty much locked in arms coming. They've got a couple guys that are still in prove it scenarios. So I like this deal for them. I think it's where they're at. I think it's a very low risk and could be very similar to what they did with Lopez and moved him midseason, right? This could be a very similar flip and profit kind of scenario.
Yeah, depending on how Baltimore is truly doing, and it'll be up to Kyle Gibson to just contain in that park. Former, I don't know, never really a closer, but a guy who people say could be, is going to go to another team where he maybe could end up getting some saves, and that's Miguel Castro, 1-year deal with Arizona. Castro's been with the Jays, the Mets. He did some waiver wire stuff for a few years. I think he's moved around a bit. Rockies as well. But anyway, he's off to his next home. And then we've got Chris Martin, who's an actual good relief pitcher, high K guy. I think he was like 12.59, maybe something like that last year. K per 9. He's with the Red Sox for 2 years. Interesting to see if that becomes or if he becomes their closer, or just an efficient bullpen guy. And then Ty, let me give you the next one, because I want to say the one after.
Yeah, like I like Zach Eflin to Tampa Bay. I mean, it makes everything that I've thought about Zach Eflin look positive, because I believe for a while here there's an arm, and anytime Tampa signs a pitcher for multiple years suggests that they firmly agree with that. So I like this one. Go ahead.
Biggest free agent signing in Rays history, Zach Eflin.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big arm. It's always been a big arm. Like that shouldn't surprise anybody. I said it in spring training last year. Like the cutter is there. Like that pitch is what could unlock him, and Tampa is going to take this here. So like for me, Zach Eflin is one of the best buys right now. Get him before spring training. Like there's a huge upside on that one, and I think it's there.
Would it matter
to use them traditionally, or the screw around with opener, middle? Like
I'd take that risk.
No. I think they're punting. I think they're done with the opener until playoffs, and then they're just going to not play normal baseball. Like they've got, because the reason they did it before was that the rotation wasn't basically ready, but they've now got McClanahan, Eflin, Rasmussen. Oh my God, there were 4 dudes.
the guy who was hurt.
Jeffrey Springs.
Yep.
And then they've Glass now. What you're going to do with Glass now? So they've actually got like a legitimate rotation they can use with 5.
And then they have arms coming.
Well, yeah, I was just and then we don't know what they're going to do with the rest. But anyway, more importantly than Zach Eflin is that the Mariners signed a relief pitcher. Thank you, Trevor Gott. Good at getting righties out.
Got that out early.
That's tonight. Right. We do have more Jerry coming.
I was going to say there's some more Jerry coming, isn't there?
Yeah, this is the short one. But anyway, high home run average last year. But that's something to possibly overcome, and he's certainly not going to be in high leverage. Ty, I know you want to go into this one because this is a story. Yeah. It's becoming a novel.
Yeah, Lewin Diaz is definitely becoming like the best journeyman in baseball without ever doing anything. He's checked off a lot of rosters now. And,
13 this offseason.
Baltimore's an interesting one, though, because they don't have a ton of left-handed power bats. Right. So it's an optimal park for that. So like this is a great landing spot for him. And there's room for playing time here. Like Ryan Mountcastle played at first only because they didn't have anybody else. Right. So you could move Mountcastle back into the outfield if you need to. You could put him just at DH. You could alternate the guys. Like there's room for Diaz to find a spot. I don't think he's going to start at the major league level. I think he's definitely going to start at AAA, but I like this for Baltimore. Adds depth. They really don't have go-to first baseman. And, Pittsburgh was never a spot. I didn't frankly understand that waiver claim given the guys that they had brought in. And then ultimately now that they brought in Carlos Santana made even less sense as to why they wasted a claim on Lewin Diaz. But I really like this for Baltimore. I like the ballpark for Diaz just as much as I like the pickup for Baltimore.
Yeah, and then after that, one day later, they signed French Cordero. So now the Diaz edition, the plot thickens. But to your point, Ty, saying he's not going to start the year with the club, yeah, that makes sense. Get him down in AAA and make sure he's your first guy up scenario. Yep. Established first baseman Jose Abreu has now added 3 more years of MLB time, or will be adding 3 more years of MLB time, going to Houston. I'm more concerned with JJ Machevitz, who is a hard-hitting first base outfielder type guy with the Astros, who had some time last year, but was not able to get, a week of starts. I think he's still a bench bat coming into next year, but more importantly, good for the Jose Abreu dynasty owners out there that you now have some longevity in Abreu, because I don't know that that was certain before. Just friendly reminder, Edwin Encarnacion fell off a cliff in and around this point in time. So let's just hope that doesn't happen to Abreu.
Yeah, I mean, Abreu is a different hitter than Edwin was, though. Like Edwin was a great hitter, but Abreu is just a big human that can still just pull the ball because he feels like it. Edwin was a smart hitter, and there's a little bit of a difference in those two in my mind. But I think there's still 1, maybe 2 good years of Abreu. That's the way I would finish that one. Seattle, Robbie, I'll let you have this one because you're our in-house Seattle guy.
They have yet again acquired a second baseman in consecutive off seasons, this time going with the former glove first Colton Wong, who's actually just a good MLB player and solid for fantasy purposes. We're not going to be super excited about it. The interesting thing is that they punted away Abraham Toro, which kind of seems like a project that went wrong, never got off the ground. Former Houston Astro farmhand and former All-Star and legit fantasy threat Jesse Winker. They're going to Milwaukee. I think Toro is going to become your quad A guy if he's not already kind of penciled in there in your head. And Jesse Winker gets a chance to go back to the NL Central. Fun fact for Jesse Winker, he'll go back on a team that's good this time, and he'll get to play against 2 teams that are not, which will be beating up on his former team, the Reds, and Pittsburgh. So I don't think this is a bad move for Winker. I'm really curious if Toro's got any fantasy value left whatsoever.
Well, I think it's a really interesting trade. Like the amount of Mariner chatter that I saw about this being a bad trade is insane. Winker stunk for them. Toro was barely there. Wong is one of the best second, if not the best second base defensively, right? So like craziness to say that that's a bad trade.
You know, when I heard about this, the first thing that jumped into my head was, oh, it's a huge win for the Brewers. Go Brewers! With I know Winker had a down year last year, but
yeah, the upsides to the Brewers for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I kind of forgot Ronnie was here.
I know I've been a little silent on
well,
going through these.
Yeah, sorry, Ronnie. I was going to ask you to jump in on a guy or two here, and then I realized that I just didn't care.
Hang on a sec, though. I want to flag something really interesting on this one, though, because like you're mentioning Toro. I think he has no chance, and you've got Mike Brasso, you've got Urias.
And Brasso's re-signed. He's legit back.
But then you've got Bryce Terang who's coming, right? Like you've got Keston Hiura still who could play second theoretically. There's a lot of depth issues here. There's a lot of depth in that outfield too. Like for me, what the Winker deal actually suggests is that there might be a Yelich deal on the table somewhere. Right. And that's the big red flag here for me is like, why do you go get a left-handed bat like Winker with the outfield depth that you already have, right? Because that means Talise and Yelich are in play, right? Or one or both, right? So it's a really interesting move, and I don't think there's any other reason Milwaukee takes on that money otherwise.
So this will be the first time I do this off season, but going to roster resource, Tyrone Taylor is slated as the right fielder for the Reds, and Winker's in there at DH. And they're giving Bryce Terang second base, which is not realistic to start the year. That would also give them 5 lefties and a switch hitter, also not realistic. So there's bodies to add for sure. But you said it, Ty, and it kind of made me wonder, Keston Hiura as a potential starting second baseman again for Milwaukee is for sure in play.
Correct.
And I am very interested if he could be starting. We've already done the dive. We're not going to do it tonight on him, but that's just an interesting little tidbit a year. So Nationals did a couple moves because we got to get to what we actually need to talk about tonight, but we got to get through hot news first. Nationals signed Jmar Candelario, who previous podcast we were saying needs a new home. Well, he's got one. It's being said he was a top 3 third baseman using F-WAR, guys. I went deep, combining 2020 and 2021. But for fantasy purposes, this means that he's in. Carter Kieboom is bumped. Let's put him, Carter Kieboom, in Abraham Toro territory, which is, swing and a miss. Yeah, or finished.
Kieboom has cost me in a handful of leagues in the last 2 years. I want to forget that name.
Who's been saying this? Who's been here for this?
I haven't heard anyone say that he wasn't for sure going to be an all-star.
Yeah, you're welcome, boys. You're welcome.
So I don't know what we need out of Jamar Candelario in Washington outside of a hot April. Ty has talked about that at length, how that, slow starts. We want to see that. We don't want things to get conflicted for the Nationals. and for
One
the New
really
England
interesting
baseball.
thing though, Robbie, just the change in outdoors, right? Like, not that Washington is a huge gap from Detroit, but it is a gap. Like, in terms of weather, it won't be as bad as we normally see to open the year in Detroit. So only just a quick seasonal comment. But diving
No,
into
that's valid.
Yeah, there's one more guy I was reading up on. I should have brought up earlier, but this could be a giant cheat code if it happens. I've read the Dodgers are looking at playing Betts at second base next year. That would be phenomenal value out at second base.
Yeah, he
If
was
he could-
drafted as a second baseman, right? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I mean, we got to see the
outfield.
offseason, right? We got to see what they're going to do with the offseason. So I think they're at this moment, Ronnie, as well. I believe that the Dodgers are the only team currently sitting over the new luxury tax threshold of 233 million. I may be wrong, but I remember reading that they were the one who was automatically going to be over. And they were talking like, or whatever, wherever it was I was taking in that conversation, that some teams might choose to just wait a year before they dive in to go back over, like if some of the teams are going to go over, basically that resetting, right, because of the tax process they've got. Whereas, to your point, the Dodgers don't need to add; they can just move a legitimate, threat. But Trey Turner still needs a home before that happens. Anyway, Ty, you were going to say something about a former Detroit Tiger who is
Daz Cameron, released from the Orioles, once promising speed profile kind of guy, fizzling from an organization that doesn't have a ton of depth in center. So that's an interesting spot there. That might be a please let me go find a spot somewhere else if you're not going to let me be here kind of scenario. But yeah, jumping really quickly back into the Dodger land, Shelby Miller on an MLB contract, which is really interesting. We talked a little bit about Shelby Miller last week on or off the air. I can't quite remember, but
it was
this is a guy that has upside. Theoretically, we've seen a little bit of it in the minors. He did quite well last year. But we'll see if it can translate. If there's a place that's going to happen, it's the Dodgers. Mark Pryor's really starting to shine as a pitching coach out there.
Yeah, remember Rich Hill back from the dead. Outfield slugger Stone Garrett signed a 1-year MLB deal. Now, if you're like, who? Just hold on a second. Although he can be sent back down because he has, I think, 3 options left, he'll just have to remain on the 40-man with Washington. So it's like an interesting thing. The Washington outfield, because we all know how much I'm interested in that, looks like it only has Lane Thomas right now as like a legitimate starting opening day guy. And then you've got guys like Victor Robles, Alex Call, who I mentioned. And at the time this move originally happened, Josh Palacios was there, who I think is the same former Blue Jay, right, Ty?
That's
and
correct.
Palacios since been let go, which opens up a space for, I don't know what, more fun and excitement with Washington. They did sign another failed prospect in Franklin Barreto, who Blue Jays fans will remember because that's how we got Josh Donaldson once upon a time in Mexico. Was Barreto was the J2 guy that had a big signing bonus, and he got traded along with Brett Laurie and Sean Nola and something else that didn't work out. So yeah, that's Washington's moves. Now we'll go to one of my I guess
Sean Manaea in that trade? That's a little off topic.
No.
Sean Nolan is the guy you're thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, for those guys for sure. Anyway, the Angels signed once useful but never fantasy dominant relief pitcher Chris Davinsky. We'll all know him for leagues that you thought he would be better in. And why don't you take this one, Ronnie? This is right up your alley. Are you following?
Oh yeah. Are we on Luke Maley here?
Yes, we are.
The Luke Maley bag. Jeez. I don't even pay attention to Luke Maley anymore. Jeez.
So Luke Maley signed with the Reds. That's what you're supposed to say. Luke Maley signed with the Reds. And then I wrote as the note, and not even a desperate rebuilding 30-team league GM in a 2-catcher scenario cares. All right. Luke Maley is the least fantasy relevant catcher we could think of.
I honestly did not realize he was still in the league.
Okay. We'll give you one more shot at the hot news. The final item goes to you, Ronnie. Read the line.
All right. I've lost my window. This is not good.
Oh my God.
Matt Boyd back to Detroit for 1 year. Matt Boyd, another former Blue Jay. I've owned
Yeah.
Matt Boyd as a back end starter before, like in deeper leagues. I don't mind having a little Matt Boyd on the cheap.
I think he's going to become a popular pick in redraft the closer the season draws as well. So,
I
Ty,
would
do you
agree.
like that move for him?
I do. I mean, it's a good rebuild. It's a place where he's had success. It's a spot where Detroit needs some roster depth. And frankly, if the young kids ever get healthy, like maybe they move him. It's a good 1-year deal, pillow. Maybe he rebuilds a little value and finds a multi-year after that. So Matt Boyd has enough stuff to play at the major league level. It's not a stuff thing.
Yeah,
So
I'm with you
I
there.
like it. I think it's a good move. Detroit needs it. So it's a good fit there. It's better than the other mucks they've been running out. So that's definitely a positive step.
You mean Drew Hutchinson? Take that back, Ty.
I will not.
All right.
It's just like all
Will
former
not.
Blue Jays hours here.
Yeah, it's true. Well,
Barreto, Maley, Boyd, Hutchinson.
Yep. Towards the end, that's what happens. I mean, they're familiar names for us, but Matt Boyd was part of the David Price trade as well as Daniel Norris, and then Norris ended up getting traded to Milwaukee last year, which I think that was the end of the deal. Like that, how sometimes you try to say like a deal lives on, right? Because players, it become whatever, they get traded for someone else and whatever.
Devin Travis,
so that's
the Halliday deal.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah. So that was the Halliday deal that what everybody bitched and moaned about. Anyway, so the David Price deal was about dead, but Daniel Norris got traded to Milwaukee, and Milwaukee got what's his name? Olsen is Reese Olsen, who now looks like a super promising pitcher who was at AA for Detroit last year, and I think is going to get some MLB time coming up this year. So that deal might end up continuing to live on. And now both Norris has come back after being dealt, and Boyd is back. So anyway, Ty, let's get on to what we were supposed to be talking about 26 minutes ago. Plans, right? Plans changed on this. Plans changed on that.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk a bunch of different leagues that we played in this year. We're going to talk what happened well for our teams, what didn't happen well, how other teams succeeded with different formats across different platforms. There's just a lot to cover here. So, what we see all the time is everybody's like, this is the best way to win fantasy baseball. And what you're going to know if you play it multiple times, there is no such thing. And there are good strategies based on what's happening. But, it's always going to evolve. And if you play in more than one league, you're going to know that. If you play just one, you're going to learn that the hard way. And so we've played in a bunch. We've learned it the hard way. We've been on the good side of it. And we're going to walk through it a little bit. So, Ronnie, we're going to cover really quickly the Listener League. And as a former champion of the league,
Right.
what was one thing that you took in the Roto format, which you then immediately retired from, which is the most Roto Ronnie move of all time?
Retired on top.
The most Roto Ronnie move ever. I want him out.
Yeah, I crushed that league in the first year I played it. If I recall, that league has incredibly short bench, unless you changed that after I left.
We did.
Short bench.
It was short bench when you played. Then we changed it. Now it's got a 40-man roster.
Oh my god, I should have stayed. Just be ridiculous.
No, you're not allowed back in.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. Whoever I left that team, I left them a very good team. It had Aaron Judge and Jose Ramirez.
Okay.
I know there's
Wait, sorry.
a bunch
Sorry.
more.
So were you so did you for sure have those guys?
I
because
for
the
sure
team
had
that-
Judge and Jose Ramirez.
Okay. So the team that won this year was Ernie's Boys, and Ernie's Boys is your same roster modified. And Ernie, I will give a
So
ton
I
of credit
literally
to.
left the championship team behind. You're telling me?
Well, and the best thing that
I-
happens is that a more astute owner comes in and doesn't screw it up, right? He comes in and maintains.
I left.
ship.
I gave them a layup.
It's not about you, Ronnie.
Don't even.
Yeah.
I don't.
We're
wanna
talking
remember
about
what my
Ernie's
minor
Boys.
was, but yes.
We're talking about who's actually the user's name's David, like the listener's David.
I've
But it's
never
called
met-
Ernie's Boys.
Met David and this Ernie Boys team, but he can send me his thank you note.
I guess he's welcome,
remember.
right? So
Yeah.
Gunner, here are the rookies. You mentioned the guys that were
I
on it
drafted
before.
all
Just-
these guys, so
Right. So the idea behind mentioning these players is so that everybody listening gets the idea of kind of your workhorses or the players who maybe came up and surprised. Not necessarily your day-to-day guys, your starters all the time. But he had Gunnar Henderson on this team who came up and contributed. Taylor Ward was a waiver wire pickup for him. Vaughn Grissom and Bryson Stott also came up and made good impacts this year. And then when we go down to the pitching side, classic, just like Rotorani had it, it's crap. It's depending on like your Eduardo Rodriguez's, Marcus Stroman, Ronnie's favorite player, Jameson Tyon, Rosemary Contreras is somebody that a lot of people had high hopes for. Luis Severino. Who else here? I'm just looking for anything that's notable throughout the year.
You reminded
Hyunjin
me as
Ryu.
you're listing off his team. I'm glad this guy figured out the strategy. That strategy was all about the hitters, and the pitchers did not matter. It was just a quantity of pitchers, a quantity of mediocre pitchers, and I'm glad he figured it out.
Yeah, and what changed from the year that Ronnie won it to last year was we went from Roto, which Ronnie had won, and we moved into head to head. And the reason we did that was you won the strike shortened league. You lost
Win the win.
2021. Well, hold on.
So-
Hold on. But the reason why I'm
The
reason why I'm saying it is that after 2021, we said the winner gets to choose the format for the following season just to make it fun. So the winner chose to move us to 8x8. So we kept the same big lineups and everything, but we moved to head to head. So anyway, congrats to David.
Times.
Yeah, congrats to David and Ernie's boys. Ty, what exactly happened with your team in this? I think I was 11th of the 15. I just flat out poor performances from my hitters. Regression killed me. And quite honestly, as the year went on, I spent less time looking into waiver wire pickups simply because I didn't know that I could dig myself out of the hole that I had been in early.
I just ran into so many injuries in this league. Like I just could not find a break. Like I've got some horses on my team too. I've got Goldschmidt, Machado, Correa, Mike Trout. First time I've ever owned Mike Trout, actually, funny enough, is in this league. Brandon Lau, who was out most of last year. But then you look at my pitching. My pitching was just devastated. And because it got devastated and because it's been multi-years of devastation, I haven't been able to trade anything. So in this draft, to Ronnie's point, everybody went pitchers. Everybody went drafting super young on the position side. So I just kind of started accumulating some pitching because, I kind of thought I could win some categories on that side. So that's the way I went. But if you look at the IL or IR for my team last year, we got Kershaw, May, Nick Anderson, Chapman, Hicks, and Morahan. Like those are 6 guys that I was counting on. But then you add Strasburg and Kluber and Cueto into that. Cueto actually was a waiver guy that I added. There was hopes that Madison Bumgarner coming off of his new deal was going to be a little bit better. Zach Plesac had a promising year. There was some upside there. I wasn't expecting Plesac to be the one that some people had thought in the back of their head he could be, but I did think in a big format like this, he could do better. But then Diekman, Hendricks, Hudson, like my pitching's there. I've got enough to be really competitive on that side. And I've got hitters coming. I'm not there yet. So for me, it was injuries in this one. And because of the guys that got injured, because of the age they're at, like I wasn't really able to trade them, and I can't really trade them because they're good players. So it's kind of one of those things, like I'm kind of stuck in no man's land based on the format.
Well, I was at the mercy, quite frankly, with I don't want to rhyme off the names of my guys, but all poor performers. I would say nobody inside the top 50 for offensive. I mean, my outfield, just so we're clear, Harold Ramirez, Victor Reyes, obviously Jose Siri. I practice what I preach. And when that's your outfield to finish your season, you're not in a good place. But the pitching, like Ronnie said, you can get by with mediocre pitching. Well, my whole thing was, as a Roto league, I wanted to make sure I had locked up a bunch of categories. So I went studs. Like I got Garrett Cole, Bieber, Peralta, Urias, Dylan Cease. And then I also took chances on, guys like Bubik, Lynch, Singer. And like I got some decent prospects, which is all irrelevant. It just hasn't come together for me. So once we know for sure what we're going to have for our lineup for next year, if we're going to go to 8x8 or go to points or whatever happens, I definitely need to alter my roster to suit the format better. I just kind of rolled it over thinking my pitching was still going to be able to kind of get me, 6-7 categories a week. Like it would dominate and my hitting could just kind of not suck. And every time you try to tell yourself that some way, somehow you can patch it together, you're going to be pooched. And that's what happened to me this year, because a couple pitchers go down and all of a sudden you're screwed. And
Rob,
very, very active waiver wire in this league early on.
You got your strategy backwards. You want to get your top-notch everyday bats and then stream it together with your pitching. That is how you win Roto. It's better if you have like one, maybe two top flight pitchers to anchor you, and then just fill in the rest with average. But you load up on the bats, so you're consistent every day, getting those categories on the hitters, and then you just focus your energy on pitching and streaming pitching. That's how
Well,
that's done.
Roto is certainly my weakest category. I can openly admit it. It's also the one that I enjoy the least. So when it switched to head, I thought I'm going to leave kind of my core and I'm going to see what I can do. Clearly, I need to make some adjustments. But let's go to a league that Ronnie's in. Well, let's go. Actually, wait. Let's do True Test. Let's not do True Test. Let's do that one last. Let's do To Be Named Later. And then that's a league that Ty's not in. But then we can go to the home league right after that.
Yeah.
All right. Sound good, Ty?
Yep.
And that way we can share some Roto Ronnie love. So, Roto Ronnie, this was quite the league for us this year. It's been a league that's now 5 years old. We have a huge offseason ahead of us. It is a contracts league. It is a points league. You do an auction. We mimic MLB in salaries and all these kind of fun, exciting things. So why don't you talk a bit about your season? Because I gotta refresh my beer before I talk about how it went for me.
Yeah, I can't wait till you get to yours. I will say, of all the leagues I played, this is the league that I did not deserve to finish where I finished, but honestly, I
agree with that.
Grinded out. Looking back at my team is absolutely mediocre on paper, but the secret here is it's a points league, and points league people forget that it's a points league is what I find.
Absolutely,
so
they do.
You really don't need to pay attention to, well, I mean, you need to pay attention, but I know we were talking last episode about guys like Kyle Farmer. Kyle Farmer I got for next to nothing on this league, and Kyle Farmer was extremely productive on this team. It's a points league. Honestly, the way I handle points league is I know my fantasy knowledge, I'm not trying to be too conceited here, is strong, and I know I'm going to be able to figure it out throughout the season as well. And I could just grind out the points. And the secret to this one, which is not really that secret if you know what you're doing, you're capped at 8 starting pitchers a week. How you win this league is you run out 8 starting pitchers a week. You find 8 guys to put out there, and then you do what you can for the bullpen, and that will give you a better than 50% chance of winning every one of those head-to-head matchups that week. That's what I found throughout the years.
Points leagues, I found really I honed it in 2018 because I took chances in several leagues to see what would work, and I was living and dying by the RP strategy. 2018 was the year I doubled down. That's when a different league started. Yeah, it was a different league that started up, and I went high and hard on legit closers. That was my whole thing. Mediocre starters, like you said, I wanted to fill the void of however many we were allowed, but I wanted to have closers that were going to be able to average 5-6 points every time they went out, because that means they're striking out a guy or two, they're getting the save and that inning pitched, all those things that add up to points. And I was more concerned with the closing, the save, than I was thinking about the hold or the multiple innings. And that since has changed. And luckily, kind of changed for me naturally by having contracts expire or making trades for pitchers when they were kind of having down years. And in this league, when it was time for me to kind of build the roster I wanted long-term, I went with a whole bunch of guys that had good stuff on the pitching end, but they were not yet there. And I was willing to wait by having, like you said, mediocre pitchers, but enough of them to get through. Yep. Where it all kind of came to fruition for me last year. And my, like, the players I could choose from week to week was insane for a points league, 30-team points league. I had Max Scherzer, Sandy Alcantara. Why do I only want to say Justin Bieber? Oh my God. Bieber. What the hell is his first name? Shane Bieber. That's so sad that all I could think of was Justin Bieber.
Don't help him out, Ronnie. Leave him on that island.
Shane Bieber, Ohtani, Tristan McKenzie, Frankie Montas, barf, dead to me, but others as well. And that was my whole strategy, was I am going to have amazing ace level pitching, and I'm going to beat the crap out of everybody before the weekend comes. It's going to be over. And that's exactly what happened all year. I was 20-0 in the regular season. It was great. What I did not do was fix my really crappy below average offense. And of course, it caught up to me. And as injuries happen, Max goes down. And then you got to move Ohtani out of your rotation so that he's up and he's hitting for you. all of a sudden I was not the team I wanted to be, and I went out in the first round of the playoffs. And then our winner, Jay, congratulations. We use MLB teams in this league. He was Oakland. His big guys, his big bats were Vlad, Seager, and Riley. And he had some really good midseason additions because he had drafted well with MJ Melendez and Michael Harris. The pitching was on point for him, but this is what he had. And this is kind of interesting. And to your point, Ronnie, he had Aaron Nola as his ace. Then he had Kyle Gibson, who, we know is good, not great. Eric Lauer, same thing, good, not great. Jeffrey Springs, who was a bit of a surprise this year. Charlie Morton and Alex Wood. And then he had Hayden Wisniewski, who came up and was able to help him down the stretch into the playoffs. So Jay was able to win, took home $650. I think that was the winning amount for that. And good for him. It's a very tough league. I got to say, I love this league. It's only a $50 league. I love it and spend a ton of time on it, just because I find you can really get into the minutia of eking out points from crappy players like you talked about with Kyle Farmer.
I finished 4th overall in a 30-point team. If we had the time to line off my roster here, you would be like, that is a flaming piece of garbage. But I grinded this thing to 4th overall points out of 30 teams. The trick is not to. Yeah, the trick is to obviously draft well, right? That's the dynasty mindset from the get-go. But you got to have dynasty, a lot of. You're like set. You're basically 75% of my team is being held over, and I'm just augmenting with what I can and making some trades and free agency here and there.
Well, that's what I was just going to say is you've got to make astute trades. You've got to make trades that you are going to be in your mind winning, because you need whatever that trade is providing you with, right? It doesn't mean you're getting a better player and they're getting a worse player. It means you get a second baseman in your 30-team league that can start for you, and you give up a relief pitcher because you happen to have one extra.
You know what's a good point here, since we're in the off season? The 2 moves that really helped me in this league, I made in the previous off season, so 2021, getting Rowdy Tellez and Ty France when they were not really hot commodities then, and then I knew that their situations were going to be very favorable. That came in incredibly. That paid off incredibly well.
The problem we're trying to solve is that there are rich teams and there are poor teams. Then there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us.
And you know what? It's the us teams that are the most freaking fun. When you find a different way. So, Ronnie, where were you on your cap? $212 million.
I'm going to be close up to it here. Where is it?
Now, still had some breathing room. But as I had said to you, we made a deal at the deadline, and I took on Bryce Harper, who was hurt, hoping
I still hate you for
something for me. Well, hold on. The reason then after I did that, I did the math, and I was like, because his contract was huge. It was like 30-some million.
When you say after, you mean like the next 10 minutes?
Yes, like immediately after the trade.
Okay.
Because I had to ask you for the money that I thought would get him in my lineup. And then I was like, oh, crap. I have Max Scherzer on the IL right now. When he comes back, I won't be able to roster both guys, and I didn't see who I'd be able to cut. So I ended up flipping Harper, and that's when I got Frankie Montas back, barf, only to ruin my season. And there you go. So karma on that one. But anyway, it was a very fun, interesting season, and I'm looking forward to our off season, which is going to be crazy.
It's going to be crazy with this. What are we in the 4th or 5th year after the
5th? This is going to be
so all the contracts. Like, I'm looking at my team. I have $120 million on my 200 something cap. Like, everyone's going to have ridiculous amounts of money to spend.
It's going to be so much fun this off season, because that league, as 30 team, we're only losing 3 owners, and we've already got 3 replacements. And I had 2 other people from our league, which is my favorite thing as a commissioner. They recommend, I think I've got a guy who wants in. Those are my favorite leagues, where someone's like, hey, I've got a guy if something happens, instead of like searching for 6 or 7 replacement owners. In this league, we're losing 3. We've already got 3, and there are 2 backups ready and wanting the next spots when it happens, which is good, because that means it's a good, healthy league, right? You're always going to lose guys, or teams are just not going to be active, and things happen. So anyway, Ty's been silent for far too long, and even had to put a Moneyball quote in. So Ty, let's talk about the home league that you created in 2012. Is that correct?
Something like that. Yeah, 2010, 2012. It's been around a long time. Yeah, I mean, I put it in the logo so we wouldn't forget. So give me half a second. I'll
Yeah.
check.
Okay. Well, the league format, I'll just say, is 8x8. We use save and holds as a single category. So you're also in 8x8. You've got the standard 5x5s. We have OPS. We count strikeouts against, and we count walks. And on the pitching side, we have quality starts. And what are the other two that we use that are the non-standard? Is it K per nine? Total Ks, total strikeouts, right?
Yep.
And what's the other pitching category
Sorry,
that
I missed it.
oh,
Saves, holds, Ks, wins, losses. Uh,
losses. It's pitcher losses. That's the other one.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's how you get your kind of extra. And then it also, every time you add a category, if you do it right, you add an extra layer of complexity, which allows you to be more, find more ways to win. And if you want to be a creative owner, it allows you more avenues to go. So
Well,
Ty,
the
talk a
great,
little about your season.
Yeah, the great. Just to finish that last point, the great thing
Yeah.
about the 8x8, we've talked about this consistently in this show, but it allows you to balance the ability to, unlike points, which is one of the things I don't like about points, is that you can add points without risk of huge penalty. Whereas in this format,
True.
you can add wins, you can add strikeouts, but you risk ERA, you risk other like percentage based categories by adding that to and it's a huge balance and a huge risk.
Yep.
The amount of grind in this league on Sunday is excruciating for every owner. It's painful how much time is spent on Sundays, and for me this year, that is the theme. Like I grinded so many Sundays and unjustly because my team was loaded and ready to win, and it just didn't go that way for me this year. But I have a star-studded lineup. I had Tatis, which we've talked about before.
Well, you maximized him this year, didn't you?
Yep. So I used. I to be fair, every ounce I could have squeezed out of him, I did. So I got like
you didn't trade him. You could have traded him.
Did you get some of that juice too?
Yeah.
Yeah, he squeezed everything. Is the juice worth the
0
squeeze?
out of 0? That's a win. So we're like, the nice part is I did pick up Pena down the stretch. He was there. He would have been there in the playoffs had I been able to squeeze out a first round matchup, which I was unable to do because I played a good team in the first round and I lost on the tiebreak, which sucked, but it is what it is. But I had Realmuto, I have Altuve, Machado, Jordan, Yelich, Tatis, Josh Young is my up and coming guy. My pitching,
Another guy didn't help this year, but
I mean, he did down the stretch a little. I mean, he was there when I needed him. I used him sparingly in the utility spot, but then I unloaded a bunch of guys at the end to make a run. But I mean, for me this year, it was a little bit of ill-timed injuries. I had some tough matchups. The way that it fell, like I ended up with a lot of scenarios where the Astros were cold and I was kind of based on a heavy Astro stack. So like the Astros were cold when I was playing the top tier teams. So I would get dusted in those matchups, which wasn't great for me getting ahead of them and getting an easy first round matchup. So that kind of hurt. So it was kind of one of those years for me. It just wasn't meant to be. I know, Rob, in this league, you know what I'm talking about in that one. But what I will that we have a small keeper list, just 6 guys. Generally, what you see a lot of is you either see 3 and 3 offense or pitching, or what we see more commonly is 4 and 2, and then we're allowed to keep a low inning count rookie, which I know gets Rob's blood boiling. But I'm going to be left with a pretty good stack of Altuve, Machado, Alvarez, Tatis, Jung, May, and Luis Castillo. Like I can live with that moving out of this year. I like that moving forward, and I can move 1 or 2 of those guys around with some backups, but I like where I'm at moving forward, which doesn't hurt me.
Yeah, so this is a league 8x8 where I have Ohtani, and we play on Yahoo. So it's 2 Ohtanis, and those count as 2 of my 6 keepers. So I've got pitcher Ohtani, hitter Ohtani, which is fine in this format. I just, I deal with it and I drink. So I get through. Now, Ty, is it $75? Is that what we paid this year?
Yep.
Okay. And it's going to eventually be up to 100. I'm just trying to give the listeners an idea kind of what our financial investment is in
Canadian
this, because as
dollars.
Canadian, yes. And as I mentioned with the listener league, I wasn't paying as much attention to it. Well, we also don't pay in the listener league. So it's a free league. So sometimes you put the sometimes you put it aside if it's a money league or a free league, and sometimes you really care about the fact that it's a money league or a free league. And in this league, it's $75. So depending on where you are on the fantasy scale, it's enough of an investment that you want to, do your best with it. But it's also a home league. So you've got guys like, our league champion who you should be able to roll right over. And then, no matter what you do, somehow you just can't beat them. But I have what I think is one of my best ever lineups for power offensively, and one of the shadiest pitching lineups I've had. Like Kershaw and Ohtani are the anchors for it, but Kershaw is Kershaw. So he's not there when you need him, and he's lights out when you don't. And that's exactly what happened to me this year. I had guys like Ranger Suarez, Brady Singer, who I mean, these are guys that got on lots of fantasy teams. Josiah Gray, Tristan McKenzie, Patrick Sandoval, and they're there and they're fine, but collectively they couldn't put it together for me. But I've got the offensive side that I should just never have to worry about. You're saying you were very Houston heavy. I'm very Atlanta heavy, like ridiculously Atlanta heavy by season's end. Austin Riley, Vaughn Grissom, Michael Harris, Acuna. I think that's all that's all that. But then I also had Schwarber and Soto, and as well as like the DH of Ohtani. And I should have been so much better than I was, but I ended up 12th in this league of 14, 5 wins out of that quality lineup. Anyway, that's poor management on my end. And Smitty, who did win our league, congratulations to him. It was also the first year I guess he'd ever made the playoffs. But he did it. And I'm going to say this on my coattails, because I once upon a time made a trade with him where I had Vlad, I had Judge, I had Strasburg, and someone else. Mondesi. I traded all of them to get Soto because I was like, I believe in Soto, and I had too many keepers. And he was able to use it to his credit to become the league champion. Good for him. Other outfielders outside of Judge for him was Randy Arozarena, Adolis Garcia. He also had Xander Bogaerts. So we're talking studs here, studs that he got it done with, but pretty crappy pitching outside of Shane McClanahan. And good for Smitty for winning it. It's a tough league, like Ty said. You got to pay attention to it, but you also need luck and poor managers like me who trip over themselves to lose weeks instead of winning.
I will say this: like, if you've got this is a great format for a bunch of buddies. Like, if you don't have a bunch of people that don't know each other, this might be the best format that I've seen, because it's kind of like March Madness, where a little knowledge helps, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to the way the ball falls in any given game or any given week. So I think it's a great format that more people should use at the beginner level for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, here's the league. We can go quickly through this, then we can get into the one that we're all we got 2 more that we're all in. This is the Dynasty League, and it's called the Dynasty League, or TDL. And we shrunk this league from 30 teams to 24 headed into 2022. We had 6 owners that left, and rather than go out and try to find 6 strangers, I just asked the league, what would you guys like to do? I really like our core. We had a big turnover the year before that, and I thought, rather than trying to bring in more people, why don't we just narrow it down a little bit? Everybody's rosters can get a bit better, and that's what we decided to do as a league. So all the numbers to win went up. You had to be a little bit better, but my team was just not consistent. Again, my pitching just hurt me so much. Giolito, Thor, Bubic, Singer, Baz, Ranger Suarez. I was counting on him. We know what happened to Baz. Bubic just didn't get it done, and Singer had the weird start to his year. But I've got a good core. I thought it would be better. I was a playoff team the year before, division champ the year before, and I was a 500-ish team this year. But I've got guys like Trey Turner, Pete Alonso, Austin Riley, ready to dominate, high average guys, Luis Ariz. But my outfield, Ty, even Ronnie, you'll like this. Jose Siri, yes, that's right, yet again. And then Randall Grichuk. Those were my dominant, underline it, dominant outfielders in that league. And that is why I was not sniffing our back-to-back league champ, Washington. Good for him. He did exactly what you wanted to. Guy drafted well from the get-go. Soto, Tucker, Swanson led the way for him. Jose Herrera was a drafted guy for him. Adolis Garcia, Andres Jimenez, Ty France, Pujols. They got it done week in and week out. He won it as the 30-team league, which was $2,300. I think he won, or $2,200, and then he won it as the 24-team league. And Ty, how did your team fare? I know this is the league that you're doing a legit rebuild, right?
Yeah, I got absolutely blown up during the pandemic. Like, I drafted this league with a bit of an experiment in mind, just to intentionally get a bunch of guys to flip. But when the pandemic hit and the delays hit, all the value in the timelines that I had really focused on went out the window. So I was just left holding the bag, and there was not a lot of option but a complete strip down. And I'm actually considering what I had, because there was some risque players in that model. I actually am really happy with the rebuild that I've put together. So I think I'm still one more year away from being reasonably competitive, but I'm certainly not going to get dusted as badly as I did last year. I have one or two positions left to fill, but like my offense could be sneaky good where I'm at now, because I've got Talese. Ronnie talked about him earlier. I just flipped Tristan Cases for Brendan Rodgers.
Controversial trade, by the way, in that league. So you received Brendan Rodgers. Would you mind talking a little bit about that? Because a couple people were like, we're questioning that when I've been having trade talks as well. As soon as you pay for next year, you can start making trades. And one of the deals that came across, someone was like, holy crap. And they said, Ty made this trade. And I'm like, yeah, I want to know why he did it. So Tristan Case is highly touted Red Sox, and you got Colorado's Brendan Rodgers.
I just the upper minors numbers scare me. I would rather be wrong on that one than be left holding the bag in a rebuild, right? Because I need to make sure I turn this into some coin because of where my roster's at. Like if I'm in a deep league and I'm happy with my major league roster, I probably don't make that trade. But because I need some major league pieces, I need to start moving this forward because I've got a whole bunch of Tristan Cases in my minor. I'd not
you
necessarily.
Ty. You also have Anthony Alford on that roster. I'm just looking at it right now.
100%. That's just the guy.
And Sean Newcomb.
Sean Newcomb, I'm still not out on fully, but Alford, I'm just haven't nipped him yet because I'm trying to make my roster look bigger.
It's the off season.
Yeah. So
make it look bigger.
so at the end of the day, like I mean, my team started. I flipped for David Fletcher, which I think is gonna this is an 8x8 as well, right? So
yes,
the categories,
exact same as the home league. Yeah.
So the categories that Fletcher's going to be able to help me with are good. He can play shortstop, which I have a hole at for now. I've got a reasonable outfield, I think, that will come together. Eloy, who's going to probably be a DH this year. I've got Nolan Jones, who went to Colorado. Mickey Moniak, my boy, who will be a future Blue Jay that we talked about last week. And then Josh Naylor is a guy that I think still no one appreciates enough that I think is going to do a little more damage this year as he grows into the power stroke. But, if Joey Bart ever figures it out, I've got him. Vidal Brujan could be a speed profile guy. Peyton Burdick's a guy that we see upside to as well. Got some at-bats last year. Finished incredibly strong in his last game and a half, which is sweet. And then I kind of stole Yokas Cespedes from somebody at the trade deadline. I can't remember which team I did that deal with, so I apologize. But for me, that's a sneaky guy that a lot of people have just kind of got soft on a little bit. So that was a nice pickup. But my pitching in this league has some real guys. But just the offense, I've got the last couple pieces. Like Arias is going to probably be a full-time Guardian this year. I like him to fill my third base spot just on position eligibility for now, which at least gives me a major league roster, right? And that's what I didn't really have this year. So from here, the pitching is going to fill itself out because I've got enough depth. But even the depth I had last year went right to the minors. So we're still a year away on this one, but I like where I'm going to be a year from now.
Okay, and that again is a fun league. That's $100 to be in that league. And it's a good one. Now we'll move into the True Test MLB Dynasty League, which all three of us are members of it. This is a highly complex league. So the best way to sum it up is it is a real money auction league. That's how we often refer to it. So you bid $80, you owe $80. You bid 50 cents, you owe 50 cents. Your team's salary is based on how much you are in theory paying your players. There's a tax system in place. There's all sorts of things to try to mimic Major League Baseball's operating procedures within our own way here. And our league champ, which was none of us, was a team.
The highest.
Sure, we'll get to that. Was a team that I built my team to beat. That was Joe, who had the Boston Red Sox. Again, 30-team league on Fantrax. They give you the default MLB teams. So it's the easiest thing to keep your divisions, keep your team names when you're doing a schedule and all those things. Anyway, he had great health, even though he did lose Mondesi early in the year. Is that really losing anything? And Harper later in the year, which is, of course, is a loss. He had a really slim bench, which is why I say there's kind of some luck involved in it, which, of course, there is when you win a big league like this. But legit studs, Soto, Machado, Schwarber, and Bell leading the way. Cole and Framber Valdez were the only starting pitchers of note. So he used the 8x8 format, which is the same as the previous two leagues we talked about, to win himself 3,300 smackaroonies. So congrats to Joe for doing that. He was also the runner-up the year before. And you've been hearing, we've had repeat champions, we'd have this, we've had that. That's what happens when you're in the dynasty is you build your roster to a point where it is highly competitive. And it's important that the teams that do that cash in at that point in time. So, Ronnie, you haven't got to talk about a team for a bit. And as you mentioned, your team had the best record of our three. So talk a little bit about what was your plan headed into the year and how do you think it went versus your results?
I kind of sat back and I looked at how I did in the previous year and what it really took to win. And I'm like, well, in this league, you can spend anywhere from $150, let's say, on the low end to with the
No, our
ridiculous
low end's
taxes.
100.
100, okay, around 100.
Yeah.
And the upper, I believe there's a team pushing 900.
With taxation,
with taxation. Yes. Yeah. I took the approach that I wanted to have, because there's no, I know you're commissionless league, so you better not screw me over on this. There's no cap on the amount of innings that you can pitch and the amount of pitchers that you can pitch. So there's 4 SP slots and 5 RP slots, and it is weekly. You can change your lineups once. So
no, it's not weekly. It's 3 days.
Well, okay.
Or 4 days. And the idea behind it is to mimic a series against MLB teams. Just to be clear. However, because it is a complex league, you don't just match up head to head with one team. You'll match up with usually 2 other teams and sometimes 3 teams over the course of 162 that period.
Total games in less time.
Sorry,
what
continue. I just wanted to clear that up.
I needed to get multi-eligible pitchers that were listed as RP that were actually starters. So RPs and starters. So
classic fantasy advantage. Yeah.
Yes, like a guy like what's his name from the Yankees? You traded him to me.
Nestor Cortez. Oh, Jameson Taillon. He was RP eligible.
Luis
Severino.
Severino. So the guys that
I've traded you several Yankees.
Yes, like you did. The guys that I had that were RP, SP eligible. So Severino was one. Tyler Alexander was in that role for a little bit. Jose Quintana was in that role. And there was a couple of others that I had throughout the season. That gave me a massive advantage because I'd always have the 4 SPs going and then 1 or 2 extra bonus RPs, which my other opponents did not. I was in a division that spends a lot of money, and I do not spend a lot of money. I believe out of the 30 teams, I'm ranked 19th overall in the most amount of money spent. So in the back half, sort of. But I was able to win my division. Yeah, 19th overall.
I thought you were higher than that. I thought you spent north of 200 last year.
I did, but it's still 18th or 19th overall.
Okay.
Yeah. So really, this league just comes down to effectively spending your money. Like, the way I look at it is I would rather build my team with a bunch of low to medium cost guys that over exceed. Some of them won't, but when they over exceed, it's going to be a massive value than paying full freight or beyond value for a guy who can't possibly return me any surplus value because you're in this example, Acuna has become a free agent and he went for $80 on a contract.
Yeah. Which is almost double the next highest player headed into this offseason.
He could not return you that value or like output you any extra value. So I have guys like, and I've had that for a little while. Kyle Tucker at $11.50 is ridiculous value. Austin Riley at $5.50 is great. The one that really came through me this year was, where are you? Kyle Wright at $6. Like these guys would all, if they're in free agency, would all be like $50 plus players. So that is really the two avenues I looked at, is the return on investment essentially, and then maximizing those RPSP slots just to gain an advantage.
All right. So I'm just going to sum her up as well. Like, Ty, I want to hear about your team right after this, which is that Ronnie had 96 wins, 56 losses, and 10 ties in this 162 game scenario. The high win total for the league was 123, which was Miami, who is a very frustrating owner in that league because of the way he flip-flops his roster so much and manipulates things. But those guys are in every fantasy league. So ours just was incredibly successful. The team that spent the most money also had 116 wins, was in that division. Excuse me, Ty, you had a winning record this year, 80 wins, 71 losses, 11 ties. What were you hoping was going to happen with your team, and how did it play out?
Yeah, I had a huge hole to climb my way out of at the beginning of the year. Like, I didn't get hot starts from my offense. My offense was banged up. Guys like Tyler O'Neill, Matt Olson had a slow start. Gleyber Torres had a slow start. Josh Donaldson had a just brutal season. So, like, in this format, I missed late night Lamont Wade for a good chunk of the year, right? And in these deeper formats, guys like that matter. But, like, Byron Buxton, and I called this one as soon as I picked him up, he was going to get hurt, and that's exactly what happened.
You were so right. Good for you.
I posted it on Twitter for anybody that wants to see. Like, it was I warned everyone that he was about to be injured, and that played out perfectly. But my pitching's pretty stacked for a league of this format and depth. I've got Christian Javier, Montez, Rasmussen, Wheeler, Luis Castillo, James Paxton will be back this year. I like Adrian Morehan going into the season. My bullpen's pretty good with Gratterall. I stole Jose Leclerc that last year on a trade. I think that's going to be a really huge pickup heading into this year. AJ Puck and Garrett Whitlock fill out that depth there. But Jorge Alcala is a guy that I talked about heading into last season. Still like him going into this season. So I'm a couple free agents away from really taking this one to the bank. Like, this is the year for me. When I was looking at my strategy, like, this upcoming season is the year, based on my contracts, based on where I'm at. So it's really going to be a push for this season, not so much last, although I was hoping to be a little bit more competitive. Frankly, I didn't expect Paul DeYoung either to fall off a cliff the way he has over the last 2 years. That didn't really help this roster either. Because I thought I had a guy at a reasonable price point for a couple years that just forgot how to hit. So that one kind of hurt a little bit. But yeah, otherwise, like, I like a lot of the guys that I have. I do have a bit of a gap between 24 and 25 on my roster that I got to solve for a little bit. But other than that, I like what I've done here. I will say this: the last draft, I feel like I absolutely killed. The one that we did in August in this league. I feel really happy about the group that I came away with. There's a couple guys that I got super, super late that I think are going to be fast movers in their system, and high school bats or high school athletes that very few people know about because I got them super, super late.
You bring up a really good point. This league drafts in August, I believe, after in season in August. And just
it
for
starts in August. It starts in August. It ends whenever we're done, which is usually early September.
Yes, the thing.
So it's not like it's quick. It's
it is
couple
a slow,
week process.
slow draft, but it is not only that year's class, but it's also anyone who's gone undrafted. And
any prospect.
A lot of the leagues, if that's allowed, people forget who's out there. So the year before last, I think I drafted 18th, 19th overall. I was able to, my first two picks, pick up Ezekiel Tovar and Yuri Perez.
Yep.
And that was way better value than the guys who were picking in the top 10, and I was picking 19th.
I feel like Ronnie's talked about this
bring
before.
that up
Yeah,
on the regular, just to rub
it's on his business card. I'm Roto Ronnie.
I'm
And
Rona
I
Ronnie, and
drafted
you're all
these two
dumb. I
guys.
picked these two guys up. When 18 other you guys didn't bother to look at the players out there that weren't
Well,
just drafted.
no, and
You know what,
Absolute-
though? He's probably not allowed to put that on his business card. He can't be out there being like, I picked up these two 17-year-olds.
But no, to Ronnie's credit, he's right. And I go into each draft with a specific
You
type
do
of
now.
strategy. No, I was doing the same year. I was doing my own strategy, which was I went heavy in the J2 class because this particular league has a signing period like MLB does with their J2. And I maximized a whole bunch of guys that I thought had high ceilings, and I went for them. And the trade-off was that I wasn't going to be able to have anything from them for years. So I took a whole bunch of guys who were just entering, the AAA to MLB time scenarios. So I wasn't drafting on prospect pedigree. I was drafting on relevance to their MLB depth chart and what their own performance dictates. So I made what appear to be weird picks. And I did the same thing again this year. But the whole purpose behind it was to give me some guys at the MLB level to shuffle around, whether it's within my roster or to trade them away, because I have J2 guys that I'm essentially allowing to age in my minors and come up. Jackson Churio's on that list, heading that list, I guess I should say. But there are several others who within the next 2-3 years are all going to become prominent prospects. But last year in 2022, I had a major step back, a 63 win season from the year before when I had 91 wins. And it was very frustrating because the tax rate in that league forced me, as somebody who was spending about $50 just in tax, to decide whether I wanted to add salary and trade away prospects to just get another veteran who, if they had a $10 contract, would actually cost you $20. Or if I wanted to trade away an MLB asset and try to kind of reset, like Ty talked about with the Dynasty League roster that he's got. So I did a hybrid version of, traded away Julio Urias, who's a pitcher that I absolutely love, and I got back Grayson Rodriguez. And Urias is 2 years left on a contract, but I was able to gain what could be up to 6 years with Grayson Rodriguez. I also got Stephen Kwan in that deal. I also got other viable minor league guys, Michael Massey, who's with Kansas City and came up and had some time, and some other guys that just made the deal okay for me. And it's frustrating to be in a league this highly competitive and be as competitive as I am and feel like I don't have a chance by the time we're in mid-June. But I kept saying to myself, I'm going to give it another week before I make any moves. I'm going to give it another week because my team can go on a run. I can be better. I know my lineup's better, but I had holes that weren't getting filled, and guys that you count on, for me, it's a Nick Madrigal coming back and just playing. He wasn't able to do that. I had Julio Iglesias, who was supposed to just putt along, and he did do that. Victor Reyes, formerly with Detroit, was supposed to putt along, and he didn't do that. He wasn't getting consistent time. And when you have guys like Julio Rodriguez and you've got Ohtani, like I do, you want to see the rest of those parts fall in place to really help to bolster your studs. And it just didn't come together for me last year. So it was frustrating. I'm back to the drawing board because we have a big league and you can pick and choose how you want to try to build. I've got to make a decision what we're going to do, what I want to do specifically with my roster in that league when it comes to free agency and trading. And I'm not sold on one strategy or the other. I think I have enough MLB pieces to put together a crappy hitting lineup and to be decent in pitching. And we've talked about it through all these leagues to this point that you don't want to sell out on pitching because of the risk that you can run into with injuries and things like that. But depth, I also think, is something that is highly underrated in this league. You need to have essentially a multi-position eligible guy who starts and a bunch of guys on your bench who could take over for him so you can move him to your next spot. And if you don't have that, you're going to struggle over the course of all of the matchups that we cover this year. So you need great health, right? You need great health in fantasy, but you also need depth, or you're going to be relying on that that health far too much.
That's how I did it in this league. I think I had probably 10 starting pitchers. 4 of them could go in the starting start, and then I was hoping I have a couple RP eligible guys, so trying to always have 6 every period that's out there. That was a big thing. But yeah, that league's just, there's so many different ways you can go about winning in that league, or not being competitive in that league. There's only one way to win.
Right.
So I've kind of, you guys know me. I'm not necessarily out here to win. I'm out here to cash. If I making money at the end of the fantasy season, whether I'm finishing first, second, third, fourth, fifth, as long as I'm making more money than I'm putting in, I'm happy with that season. So, making the playoffs, getting into the playoffs in this league is an accomplishment, and then just hope you run into some good luck and see how things go. A lot of my teams that I build are built purposely to be consistent throughout the season to get me to the playoffs, but they are not good on any one game matchup. Like I won't have necessarily a stud pitcher to throw out there. So that's when I run into trouble. But maybe the other guy's hurt. Maybe the pitcher has a bad day. You just run into some luck. So I find that strategy is much more affordable of just grinding out your team to get to the playoffs and then let what happens there.
Absolutely.
Well,
Ty,
I think
did
that's
you
a
have?
lot of formats, though, really quick, though, right? Like,
Yeah.
most leagues get in and see what happens. Like we talked about in our home league, like a guy with a very lopsided roster won our home league. So anything can happen once you're in, and that's the thing is don't play to make sure you're dominant in the playoffs. Play to get there, and then
that's
figure
what
out how
some
you
of
win
these
money.
teams in True Test are doing. They're spending 500, 600 plus, and they have a dominant team, but then they lose in the first round. So
Correct.
I'd rather spend a fraction of what they're spending and lose in the first round.
Absolutely.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we've got a huge off season in that league with the free agency and just things that might change within it. But it is for some, it is a very affordable league. And for others, it can be a massive investment. Time investment is something that I prefer to do, and kind of keep the total amount for me is kind of ideally 200 or less is where I'd like to be. But when you think your team's good, you're willing to add in a league like that. Just like an MLB team, you can add salary if you think it's going to get you a little further. So I was in several other leagues that aren't really fun and exciting to talk about because neither of you guys were in it. But one league that I did want to mention is the Reboot League that I am in. And Ben Badler is also in that league. He invited me in. It's a 16-team Keep Forever Dynasty, 8x8, 9 hitting categories, 7 pitching, which I've never been in a league that had more on one side than the other. So that was interesting. The extra hitting category, strikeouts, OBP, and slugging. I forget what the final one was. I've missed that. And then on the pitching side, the extra outside the 5x5 are holds and quality starts. So I led wire to wire. Very exciting. 16-5 record, though. Not dominant, but good. Took home the championship. Really, it was, again, very much like our home league. It was studs. I had Judge, Jose Ramirez, Will Smith. Very solid cast supporting them. High average guys like Luis Ariz. My pitching was solid. The thing I did, put my signature on was the Brooks Raley, Clay Holmes, Batista RP thing. And that paid off because it had both saves and holds 2 separate categories in that league. So I was able to kind of get that advantage there. Ronnie, were there any leagues that you were in outside of our world before we get into the Surf League that you had notes on, something you did well, something that fell apart for you this year?
Yeah, there was another Roto League. I think you played it for 1 or 2 leagues, or 1 or 2 years, not leagues.
Yep.
It's a 12-teamer. You get to keep 5 MLB players every year, and then there's also a small rookie pool. I think we draft 5 rookies each year, and it caps out at 20. So if your guys have rookie status, you could give up draft picks starting in the 11th and on rounds to keep those guys. My team on paper was going to be dominant. I had Cron, Turner, Bregman, Machado, Edman. Who else did we have? Mike Trout, JD Martinez, Burns, Walker Buehler, to name a few, Chris Bassett. Really, this one fell apart about the time that Walker Buehler went down.
Now! Holy you son of a bitch!
I believe Ty is pouring another drink.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ronnie, continue.
No problem. Basically, all this to say is I was in first place, which I typically am, and then I sucked and came out 4th. So,
wow,
yeah,
what a
injuries.
humble brag turned
Actually,
into
fifth.
self-deprecating. I was in first place, as I usually am. Mismanaged my way.
As I usually do in this particular league.
That's great. Yeah, I do remember. I was in that league for a couple
in the
years.
last 3 weeks, I managed to just fall down the ladder.
That is your resume in that league. As I said, yeah, I was in it for a couple years. I just honestly found everything I was doing to be too many leagues that needed a lot of time to do well. And that wasn't a league that I was overly drawn to because I really like having the dynasty rosters where you just have more players. So
Yeah,
I chose to leave it. It was, nothing at all about the league. It was just the fact that I like to have a full roster to, wreck year over year instead of a small one in a draft. So
I've basically had Trout and Manny since the inception of this league, and it's been 6-7 years now. But it might be time I have to cut bait with Trout coming up soon.
you might have to put your trout back in the pool, as they say.
But
Anyway,
I'm
Ty,
releasing.
was there anything else for you outside of before we hit up surf that was fun and exciting for you?
No thing that I was in, but one that I'm joining. So an industry league or a colleague of mine in the industry had asked me to join one for a couple of years now, and it finally came together. And his warning was just be careful. There's a lot of chirping, which got me super excited.
Ooh.
Because that is my favorite thing to do.
A league full of Rotoranis?
No, better by the sounds of it. But the thing is that like that's the one thing I'll say about dynasty leagues is there's too many people to have a really good chirping environment, right? Because there's too many people that don't know
get
each other.
hurt.
Yeah, they get offended because they don't know it's a joke. I mean, there's no lawyers in the room right now, so we can say this, but there's just people that don't understand the difference between this is a game that we're playing to have fun. And yes, we're spending a little money, and yes, it's a little bit serious, but it's still fun. So
yeah,
I'm excited to join that one. And just be the out of town guy that just says stupid stuff.
That's right. That's
eventually
what a
takes
good
the
place to
win.
be. What a
gonna be
good place
great.
to be in. Yeah, you just get to be what's this guy's deal, and that's a good guy to be.
I'm not in the side chat, which is great.
Well, that's how Ronnie starts out. It's like, what's up with this guy, and then eventually it just goes to like, oh man, I hope this guy leaves.
Yeah, Ronnie is like the group chat version of like that annoying side piece, right? Like
I feel like
version.
Like you're just saying, a lot of people just don't get it. I mean, I probably annoy you guys, but I'm here. We've digitally met. There's a difference between just like being a troll in your own league chats and being
I'm a troll in real life. Like I've seen where you live, Ronnie. I have been to that house.
I'm stalking.
Anyway, yeah. No, I get it though. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off on that point, but just there. I think one of the things as well, just in the discussing the various leagues and things, something that can really make or break a league, and I truly believe it, is an active way to communicate, a group chat. And there are host sites that offer chats. I've yet to see one that's fun, one that's good. But you get into your, like Discord's an option, GroupMe's an option. Just Ty likes to do Facebook for some reason. He also sells essential oils on it, but it's the group chat. It goes through there. Just as long as there's a way that you can communicate.
Heads up.
Get your orders in. Just a way to communicate with the people in your league, not from a commissioner standpoint of like saying, hey, here are the rules, but just like trash talking, like talking baseball is fun. Like it's early December. The three of us are together on Saturday night talking about our league, summing up last year, seeing if any of the information we're spewing can help someone else devise a strategy for their league, for keeper, redraft, dynasty. It's tough to be in a league where no one communicates because you don't. It's even trade talks it's hard to drum it up.
Times,
right?
Like I'll just DM a guy and be like, hey, are you interested in dealing player XYZ, or what would it take, rather than just blindly send like a trade offer, out of the blue.
I get so annoyed when I send a message and I see that it's read and I don't get a response. And then that person comes back to me when they're ready with something completely different, because it's so easy to say, sorry, man, like I don't see a fit. Like that's the easy way to blow it off. But no communication when it's available through a chat or something is very frustrating for me. But you can also just like choose to make a game of it, as I do with one team in the True Test League. Whenever he says he's looking for something, I send him the worst possible offer I can come up with. in the hopes that it'll be like, what are you doing? And he finally started replying and saying, come on, that's not reasonable. And I'm like, well, what are you thinking then? But they never give you their offer.
That's
I can
Right. That's
verify that it
it's
was
the
not me.
blink. No, it's not you. It's not you. But anyway, sorry, Ty. What were you gonna say?
Well, the funny part is like when you watch in the bigger leagues, like there's no communication of like, hey, this player's available, right? Like you see these trades happen, like what are you guys
Yeah.
doing?
How did that?
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
How did they not
like
shop it around?
yeah, like I have a far better option available, and I need that position. How did you not talk to me? Like it's amazing how many times that happens. Or like on the flip side, they have an obvious position need. And they're like, wait, I don't like your trade offer. Well, okay, cool. Well, what do you like? Like, like you need this position. It's very obvious.
I can see it happening in 30-team leagues. A lot of them will have like a channel set up for trade discussions, and maybe you just miss it for 3 days. Maybe you're busy, like you're traveling to South America, you just miss it, and he takes some crappy deal because you didn't see that he was looking for something that you
Oh,
needed.
I don't miss trade offers. That doesn't happen.
That's true.
I miss group chat for sure, but trade offers. I do
Yeah,
not
no,
miss.
that's different. I'm just saying a lot of times people will do it in the group chat. It's like, hey, player XYZ is available and looking for a center fielder, and then they'll
Which
take
is, I love it. Right.
crappy
If you're
player.
at the point where you're just going to put it out in the chat, whether it's like the group chat or like you said, a specific trade link within it, that's great because you're now saying, look, guys, I'm open for business. And then people can come and you can get some dialogue going. The leagues that I think are the most frustrating are the ones where there's no chat set up to do that, so that you can't say, this is what I'm looking for. And ideally, I would like something in this vein back, right? Surplus here, I'm short here.
Yeah.
So
You
I've
know,
sent 6 trade offers since the beginning of this episode.
I honestly,
and
if
I've
it's me,
rejected all of them.
I wouldn't play in any like league I'm putting money on that isn't like a best ball, that doesn't have a league chat, like an official league chat. That's not like the message board. Like you're just wasting your money without that engagement.
Yeah, I think that's
I
a good
agree.
point. Yeah, the engagement's the key. So let's finish up with a redraft league we were all in. Even though Dynasty podcast is our thing, we did the Surf League, which is part of the Earth League. If you're a Twitter fantasy baseball maniac, you know what we're talking about. None of us were inside the top 60. Ronnie, were you in the top 50 of that?
I was top 50 overall.
Were you? Okay, where did you
Yeah,
finish
I
up?
was 50 on the nose.
Oh, okay, 50. Oh, okay.
4 spots away.
So to be
from
fair,
Eric
he did say
Cross.
inside the top 50.
Oh,
Thank
Or
you.
not
I mean,
to say
does
inside-
50 count as in times the top 50? I was
No.
in
No,
the
because
top
it is
third.
50.
I was in the top third.
There you go.
Where
Good
did
for
you guys
you.
finish? I can't.
I don't know.
I
don't
See,
know.
I did. I did the
I did
honorable
write it
thing
down
where
just for the
no,
listeners.
I did. The
Oh, did you?
honorable
Okay.
the league when I was out. I stopped picking up waiver guys. That's the way to play it. That's the way you do it in the Earth format. I don't care.
Out
what
of
my-
150 possible finishing spots, Rob finished 109th and Ty finished 121st.
Okay. There we go. So I knew I was in a tough spot when my best pitcher at the end of the draft was Trevor Bauer. I had
I think that was
I
the
had a
first
lot
pitcher
of
you drafted too, like in round 17.
I believe it was. It wasn't that late. It was higher than everybody thought. But I had a and I talked about this on a previous pod, so I won't get into it. I had a very specific strategy of trying to pick production-based stolen base guys. It did not work this year. I still, looking at the data, still believe it's a viable strategy in redraft. Definitely don't want it in Dynasty because you need more stability and stolen bases can come and go. But as we've talked about the minutia of MLBs increasing the size of the bases and things of that nature, we could see more stolen bases next year, which is why I want to try that strategy again. Oh no, I just told everybody what I'm going to do. So anyway,
doesn't it dilute your strategy though? Because there's more stolen bases everywhere now.
Well, it's about picking players who are productive at runs, RBIs, home runs, but also legitimate and average, and they're legitimate stolen base guys. So it's not picking up somebody who has 10 stolen bases.
Players? Well, no one else is going to do that.
Well, see, the key is to jump the gun, right? That's why I punted pitching. Do you see how that worked? I got all the guys I wanted, relatively speaking, but my goal was to improve the pitching as the year went on. The problem was that my stolen base production guys were not producing at a rate that kept me in the upper tier of the hitting, and somehow my pitching was better than my hitting for a bit, and that was it wasn't coming together. So anyway, that's what happened to me. as part of the greater league where there was it was 150
Yeah,
total, right?
150. Yep.
Yeah. I think the concept is good, but I just could not think of a worse league than one that has 2 catchers and Surf has 2 catchers because Earth has 2 catchers because the host site NFBC has 2 catchers. And I don't get it. Give me all the middle infielders, all the outfielders you want, but don't make me have and roster 2 catchers. But how did you guys feel? Ty, you unfortunately were the furthest back, but what was the thing that kind of took you out of it?
Injuries again. Like I had a rough year
Oh,
injury
that's
wise
right.
across the board. My team got
Because you were
blown
good
up.
early, right? You were
Yeah, I
good
was in
early.
Yeah,
in
you're up
first
there.
for a while. Like I was in the top 5 for a good stretch, and
I
then
remember
it
the
all
podcast
came.
in the summer where you said, "This is as good as it's gonna get, and it's downhill from here."
Yeah, and it went exactly that way because like the wheels came undone, and then the axles, and then they repoed the whole vehicle. Like it kind of all went away really really fast. Like my entire outfield disappeared. My infield was injured. My entire starting rotation got banged up. It came back at the end, but like in Roto, like once you're done, you're done. Right? That's the bad part about Roto is that when it's over, it's over. And like I said, once I recognized it was over, there was no realistic thing outside of pride. And like, I don't really care just to make that effort to say I wasn't last. I could care less. I was never going to beat it. So why would I take it away from the guys in our league that could potentially go to the top? So I left the waiver wire. I made a good college try to pick up guys until it was clearly over. And then I kind of backed off and let it fall apart because I don't know. It just seems like the way that format is set up, that's the right way to do it. So that's kind of why I fell as far back because my team wasn't that bad. It wasn't bad enough to be that far back, but it ultimately
Yeah,
fell
you should have
apart.
finished above Rob, but you didn't.
Yeah, but it
Oh,
is
come
what it is.
on. My
Yeah,
goal
Rob, your
ended
team
up
stunk. Your team was bad.
Oh, by the time we hit September, I think that's when I did my one big waiver wire push. And I thought kind of to what you said, Ty. I wanted to just make my push and then get out of the way. I knew I wasn't competing for a championship, but I wanted to be inside the top 100. Just because I had drafted with a strategy that obviously did not work. I just wanted to have that little bit for myself. And it didn't work out in the end. But Ronnie, you're top 50. At 50, I like the technicality of being in the top 50
I
because you
think
are
I
50.
peaked at 39 in July or August. That I was pretty proud of
Okay.
that. But
Was there anything within that form? Now, within the league itself, we have a ranking and within the overall, but we care more about the overall than the
yep,
league.
I finished
Was there
fourth in our
any,
league
were you
itself.
for, okay. Was there anything within it that you took away from this year that you would bring to next year, even though it's redraft? We can always look at redraft for strategies for Dynasty. Something that changed?
Yeah. It was the fab. I was not. This is my first NFBC experience here, and
$1,000 fab for the
that
season for
I
everyone who
was
doesn't
not
know. Yeah.
prepared for the amount of fab craziness in the first like month and a half.
Right.
I kind of
Okay.
sat back. I didn't wait until like too late. It was probably, or maybe it was too late. I didn't wait until like September, like you said. About June, I figured this out. Then I started to make substantial ads. We had to, but the one thing I noticed in this league, everyone goes crazy about the closers.
Yeah.
I need to look this up as we're talking on the fly where I finished for closers because I did not really go out of my way to get any
Oh, like
closers.
for saves overall? Yeah.
Yeah, I let that fall to me and I finished with 10.5 points in saves out of 12 teams in our league.
15.
Or out of 15. So like that is acceptable for me for saves, right where I want it to be. And my closers were I think the first one I took was in the 11th round, Scott Barlow. Then I got Joe Barlow. I had Lou Trevino, and then I picked up some guys on the wire. I found the easiest way to do this is if you picked up guys out in Fab who had just gotten the closer duty like that waiver period, you were screwed. That was going to cost you a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
You need to be a week ahead. You need to be looking like I got who is his name slipped my mind right now. The Cardinals closer at the end of the year. That
Oh,
guy
geez.
whose name is slipping
Gallegos?
me. No, the other guy.
Oh,
Hicks?
Ryan
Hazley.
Hazley, thank
Yeah.
you.
Hazley. I picked up Hazley a week or two before Hazley became a thing. So I picked him up for like $4 fab. 2 weeks later, he's going for like $70 fab.
Yeah.
So just moves like that, like using your bench to think ahead for closers, so you don't have to spend on closers in the draft. For me, I'm going to load up on bats. In this league, I liked to have 1 or 2 anchor starting pitchers, so I took Ty's Justin Bieber there in the second round, and then, or sorry, Rob's Justin Bieber, Shane Bieber.
That's Shane Bieber for everyone
Yep.
who doesn't remember an hour and 30 minutes ago.
And I wish this guy came back sooner, but I got Luis Castillo in the 8th round, and then Faber Valdez right after him. But my bats were loaded. My bats were loaded.
Okay, so that's where you did bats first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was a fun experience to do it. I'm looking forward to doing it next year. We will be able, we were talking before about it, we will be able to do it again because we pay outside. So just for everyone who doesn't know, we're in Ontario, Canada, and the gambling laws have changed online for us. So we're not allowed to do like single season or single day bets unless it's through a website that has basically paid the government too much money. So some of the smaller websites like NFPC, they don't do it. So we're not going to be able to do it. Fantrax also doesn't do it. So you can't do redraft on it. So if you are a Canadian listening, make sure that your province is cool with it. If you play heavily on a site like NFPC or Fantrax for redraft, you won't be able to do it. But Dynasty, you're okay. I don't know what the distinction is between those.
I don't even think DraftKings and FanDuel is doing daily anymore in Ontario.
Okay. Well, I just know that there are heavy restrictions on them on it at the moment. But yeah, for everyone that's out there, that's a little thing to note for yourself if it's going to affect you. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I certainly will be trying less breakout picks in my redrafts, but that's always a problem I have. I just always want to pick the guy that could be a top 10 but ends up 800th, you know.
Use your fab on that and just spend $4 on fab 2 weeks before you think they're going to break out, and then use your picks for real players.
Well, the problem when you have middle infielder, 5 outfielder leagues, 2 catcher leagues is that the breakout candidates also end up getting drafted. So it's a matter of at what point do you jump the gun. This year I certainly went early and I was okay with it in strategy, but obviously the execution was a failure for me.
That is a good point. If you're a player, like I drafted Adley Rushman, sat on my bench.
Oh, right.
If they're not in MLB, when you
if they have never played
then
MLB
you cannot
before
pick them
on the
up
NFBC
until
site,
they
yes.
have gotten an appearance at a game. So you can't
Which is
get in
so
early
dumb.
on them. Yes.
It is so
Again,
dumb. That is the
you-
worst part of that league.
Next to 2 catchers, the fact that you can't pick anybody up that doesn't have current season MLB experience or whatever previous MLB experience is just so short-sighted. And it's not about adding to the fun and excitement of a waiver wire or whatever. It's about strategy. You should be able to cut.
dumbing it down so the people who be like,
Yes.
this player is somebody, I should have grabbed them last week. I didn't.
Well, MJ Melendez became a super hot ticket item because he's a catcher who's a prospect who got called up. Adley Rushman, like you said,
Yeah.
if he was drafted beforehand, that was it. And that's the problem with a host site where they dictate rules of that nature. They take away your ability to use a strategy. You could have an injured player and you're like, well, so-and-so's done for me. But instead of dropping him and getting, the waiver wire scrub that I'm going to try to get 2 weeks out of, I'm going to pick this prospect who I think is going to be up in July and just sit on it. You're not allowed to do that in NFBC. You have to do it earlier. Nothing against the site. I certainly don't mind the website. But that's just a formatting choice that they have or whatever, a rule that they have, as well as their 2 catcher thing that I would just rather do without.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the cost of waiting is just exponential, right? And so like it's a balance because it's like you're really putting all of the value on the auction, right? Like
Right.
Which cool, it's a thing and it's maybe their thing, right? So I don't know. That's all it really angles towards. But otherwise, I like the platform. I'll say that. I think that piece, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, just their settings. Well, anyway, that was an awful lot of talk, almost 100 minutes about things to learn from what we did and did not do successfully. And I mean, I'm sure everybody's smarter for it. So
well, and I mean, I think all of us as we head into next season are looking to improve on it, get a good winning streak going.
We're good, streaky! Yeah!
that's right. And
yep, go ahead, Robbie.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I just want to say that coming up, we do have, because somebody asked me before, are we going to do the Rule 5 deep dive? Absolutely, we are going to do the Rule 5 deep dive. We just need winter meetings to take place and the Rule 5 to take place. We are going to talk about the players that were picked, their likelihood. We did not do a preview as we did last year, but we are going to do a wrap-up episode this month before we get into like full.
Who's
bloom
asking
off.
if we're gonna do the Rule 5? We're the Rule 5 guys. Like we talk
You know
about
what?
this.
You know how I like to use
Right.
paper, Ty?
We can't have anyone freak out there, okay? We've got to keep our composure. We've come too
On OP.
far. There's too much to lose.
I was
on all the sound bites tonight, haven't you?
I was looking at
It's
a
hot- it's hot
previous
tonight.
winter schedule for us was December 10th, sorry, Rule 5 wrap up. December 15th became the Rule 5 preview first, then Rule 5 wrap up. December 20th, we had Bogman from In This League on with us. And we talked about fun, exciting MLB things. Goes all the way into prospects into January. And you know what? We're going to do a version of that again. I don't know if I'll bug Bogman, but we'll see.
All right, here's my fun question for Ronnie, and it's gonna hurt him.
Ooh, I'm waiting for this.
And I already know his answer. It's just gonna hurt him when he's wrong. Who wins the Gold Glove first?
Oh no!
Jeremy Pena, or Bo Bichette?
Ooh. Can I pick option? Can I pick neither?
No.
Equal. None of them.
But you got to pick one. Who's the one that
really
you
don't
think wins?
Jeremy Pena win a Gold Glove? That's a mistake. Also,
I would take. Okay, here's the thing. I will take Pena out of the shortstops. If Bo moves to second, maybe he can move up. Because half his errors and he can't make the throw half the time accurately.
Interesting. So what you're saying is Bo Bichette. That's what I heard. I'm going to take
if he's
Jeremy
playing
Pena
second
then,
base where he should
just
be.
because I want to see you pinned to Bo Bichette.
I will take.
After last week.
Here's the
This
thing.
is fantastic.
If,
this worked way better than I thought it was
If
gonna.
Bo Bichette moves to second base, we can both win.
Yeah. Yes, I like how this played out. So that I got where I wanted to be. That's a great spot to leave it. It's been Tyler Rob. Thanks to Ronnie for joining us here on Dingers.